Gap analysis promises a clear path from where you are to where you want to be. It's a standard tool for strategic planning. But what if a core assumption is wrong? The managers defining skill gaps are often the least capable of identifying what's truly needed. This isn't just one manager's mistake. It points to a systemic breakdown, ignoring the human and cultural elements in your analysis. These aren't isolated errors. They are part of a pattern of common failures that turn well-intentioned analyses into wasted resources. We will now break down the 4 key areas where gap analysis goes wrong, from flawed foundations to strategic blind spots, so you can get it right. The first breakdown happens before the analysis even starts, with foundational flaws in how the entire project is planned and set up. It starts with an undefined scope. Without clear objectives and boundaries, your analysis becomes a vague search that finds nothing of substance. Then, it's fueled by bad data. Relying on anecdotal, subjective, or inaccurate information creates a flawed picture of your current state. Finally, it's treated as a one-time project, not a continuous process. The plan is outdated the moment it's printed because business needs have moved on, so your setup is correct. But what happens during the analysis itself? This is where the next set of common failures emerge. A common trap is analysis paralysis, overcomplicating the process with too much data and complex models, leading to endless deliberation and inaction. But the most critical process error is focusing on symptoms instead of root causes. Why does this happen? Symptoms are easy to spot and offer quick, visible wins. Addressing a symptom, like a missed deadline, without fixing the root cause, like a flawed workflow, guarantees the problem will return, creating a cycle of firefighting. This rush to fix symptoms is often driven by something deeper than just a flawed process. What if the biggest failures aren't in your spreadsheets, but in your meeting rooms? The answer is yes. The third major failure category is all about people, culture, and organizational silos that undermine the entire effort. It starts with who isn't in the room. Excluding key stakeholders, the people who do the work, guarantees resistance and dooms implementation from the start. Next, analysis is conducted in departmental silos. This ignores how teams are interconnected, leading to solutions that fix one problem but create 3 more elsewhere. Finally, the data itself gets skewed by human bias and a reluctance to report weaknesses, especially when people fear blame. The official story doesn't match reality. Even if you get the process and people right, are you looking in the right direction? A final set of failures comes from strategic blind spots and poor follow-through. A huge blind spot is focusing only internally. Your processes might seem perfect, but they are useless if they don't account for market trends, competitors, or regulations. Another critical blind spot is the gap between policy and reality. Analysts review official documents, assuming they reflect day-to-day work, but they often don't. The real work often involves undocumented workarounds. Ignoring this means your solutions are based on a fantasy version of your organization and will ultimately fail. Once gaps are found, the next failure is treating them all as equally important. This dilutes focus and spreads resources too thin, preventing meaningful progress on real issues. And how do you know if you're making progress? You don't. If you fail to define clear, measurable success metrics from the start. Closing the gap becomes a guess. The final strategic failure is the most common of all. No follow-up. An action plan is made, but no one verifies if changes were effective. So problems just resurface later. We've seen failures in foundations, process, people, and strategy. But they aren't separate issues. How do they connect to create a perfect storm of failure? Remember the foundational flaw of an undefined scope? That directly leads to the people problem of excluding stakeholders. Recall the process error of fixing symptoms? That's magnified by the strategic blind spot of ignoring the policy versus reality gap. Think about this chain reaction. Bad data, a foundational flaw, is gathered within departmental silos, a people problem. This results in an inaccurate action plan. The ultimate insight is this. Gap analysis fails when organizations treat it as a sterile, mechanical process. So, how do we avoid these interconnected failures and make gap analysis actually work for our organizations? It starts by recognizing the 4 failure zones. Get your foundation right with a clear scope and good data. Then refine your process to dig for root causes, not just symptoms. Involve the right people and break down silos to get a complete picture. Finally, maintain a strategic view. Prioritize, measure, and treat it as a continuous improvement cycle. The common failures of gap analysis are not inevitable. They are the result of a narrow approach. Adopting a holistic, human-centric view turns it into a powerful tool for change. The goal isn't just to find the gap. It is to build a bridge that people are actually willing and able to cross.